My name is Mike Dahle. I'm the executive director of the Wisconsin High School Esports Association.
Cool. And people, I guess, when they first hear esports, they probably have one notion of what it, is, means, or,
hmm
if they only play one certain game, then they hear esports, then they just probably just think of that certain tournament or something like that. So just to start, like, what is sort of esports to you, like, in general?
So to me, esports is its own industry at this point. It's a lot different than just video games itself, right? So like
Uh-huh.
a video game can be an esports, but not all esport. Well, I guess I should say you have video games, and not every video game is an esport. But
Right.
every esport is a video game, right? So not every single game has one, even though there may be a competitive mode to it. There may not be enough of a following or a developer interest in order to support it to create a more of a professional structure around it. And
Hmm.
so that's, I think, a major difference between you have like a grassroots movement, which is then esports to where it's the community that organizes it. And it's a lot more like your local environment, your local community getting together versus then like a developer funded league, which is then like a pro series and you have like franchise slots and everything like
Hmm.
that. So there's different variations and levels of financial investment as well within the industry as well. So
Yeah. And also, esports to me is still like in its, I guess, infancy stage, sort of growth stage. I actually just did an interview and he said that it's kind of like in a stillborn stage. Just kind of the way that sort of investments are looking now and the different, I guess, entities that are a part of it, or the very few entities that are a part of it. Where do you see like esports like as it sits now? Because obviously, like I said, it's still kind of growing, and even just now, I mean, how old is esports? It's not even.
depends on how far back you
Yeah,
want to
how far?
go.
I mean, like, I guess I guess the first entity of like esports that people think of is like League of Legends and like Warcraft and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously there was competitive tournaments and modes and stuff before then, but I guess that's kind of where I sort of jump on board as far as what is esports. So, like, where do you see like, I guess the stage of esports where it is now?
So I think where we're at now is that we're having to find the sustainability level. So I would determine like my start for esports was back with like StarCraft Brood War and like the
Okay, yeah.
Korean Esports Association um right around like 2000
Hmm.
is when I started to notice some of that. And then yeah, around 2010 to 2012 we start to see then League of Legends starting to grow as a real popular title. And then right around like the 2018, 2017 type of mark, we saw a lot bigger jump as far as collegiate and scholastic as a whole, really adopting this. And now during like the COVID years and some of the years following COVID, we saw a large injection of venture capital funding, a lot of program development as far as platforms for competition, data metrics, analytics, and like there was this big boom because everybody wanted to see like, oh, it's this, $1 billion industry and it's going to be X billion dollars by this year. Well, the revenue streams weren't meeting what the investment was looking for. And so
Hmm.
I think the consumerism is a little bit different compared to like traditional sports models or some other different types of industries that are out there. And the big difference is too is that these are developer owned. So it's intellectual property
Hmm.
and there's limitations what you can and cannot do with some of those. And so now us as organizers are trying to then find ways to make this sustainable. A lot
Hmm.
of us have been doing this as at least in K-12, I should say, have been a lot of volunteers running state associations, helping put on state tournaments and building out the infrastructure that's here. And then the collegiate level as well is already a little bit further advanced as far as like sustainability goes. But then you still have 3 or 4 leagues and there's still some turnover. And then there's some programs are like, well, we started investing a lot in this and now we're having to retract how much that we're putting into it.
Hmm.
And so it's still very much in flux. I still think it's gamers are always going to be there.
Yeah.
Esports is still always going to be there. It's just what does the industry itself look like? And I say
Hmm.
that as like from your broadcasting side to your marketing side to your business ops side, the administration side, and like esports will be there. But will all
Hmm.
these other tertiary roles still maintain, or do we have to still consider to contract a little bit more in order to find sustainability?
Yeah. Do you think that path is through the education system? or do you think that it's through the developer sort of ecosystem? Like, where do you think that comes from? Because obviously, just from a, I guess, a education standpoint, I mean, this is very new from my experience, just because when I was in school, I mean, there weren't really too many avenues to get into. I mean, you could say you wanted to make games if you wanted, but I mean, as far as school was concerned or trying to find a scholarly path to that, that wasn't really a thing, back then. So like, but on the development side, it's like so few developers, and they are only probably going to invest in what they can see themselves making dollars in, or something that they can see that is going to benefit them over a long period of time, not just like over a couple seasons of, say, a league or something like that. So like, where do you think that actually comes from?
I think in K-12 it means something different
Hmm.
because we use esports as a way in order to connect students to the community or to create a community on a lot of our campuses. A lot of the data is showing that these students aren't involved in any other extracurriculars, and this is their first time participating in a team environment.
Hmm.
And so a lot of this is then helping them create some of those connections to their peers, to faculty or staff, or even just the building as a whole. And so to me, could also compare this to like something like robotics, right? You're not going to go and join, well, you may like go into like submit something into like battle bots or something like that,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
robotics in a K-12 setting is like harnessing the STEM interest and development and building and programming and all that STEM related curriculum that's there for students to find what they're passionate in. And so
Hmm.
to me in K-12, it's that connection piece and developing some of their interests. Then that could lead to collegiate opportunities because there are scholarships available. But at the same time, when they're transitioning out of high school into either a 2-year or a 4-year program, they know that there's a lot of these communities at those campuses. So from a retention standpoint, colleges have these programs there, and these students will just transition from high school to college programs, still competing, maybe not looking to go pro or anything like that. But it's, again, that community of like minded individuals on campus, and it
Hmm.
creates that connection there as well, which helps with retention, grades, performance, and a lot of those other like the successes that we want to see for up and coming youth. So
Hmm.
I want to see Pro League succeed, as I literally have League of Legends on my other monitor over here as I'm watching the European League this morning or
Yeah.
this afternoon. I don't know if Pro is going to be there forever, but I know in K-12 we can still utilize this as a meaningful tool.
And so, like, what does the curriculum look like? Like, what does like esports K-12, like, what does that actually mean to someone who like only thinks of esports or sees esports in sort of the professional capacity?
So to me, I'm a former business education and computer science teacher. So
Okay.
I use esports as a case study essentially, to where we could say like we could look at our target market and demographic of who we're getting to. How are we reaching them via social media? What social media are we pushing? Like, what does our broadcast look like? How can we monetize our broadcast? Create different revenue streams there, and we can actually go through the entire business process and look at all the different departments within a business and how it functions within this medium. The other good one is from like a sports and entertainment marketing, using this, like treating it like it is a pro team in your school. And now, because we don't always get access to the football team
Yeah.
and we don't always get to run their broadcasts or run their social media, but we get to run our esports however that we want. And there's not
Mhm.
as much oversight or red tape in order to get through to be able to do that. And so we use it as a way in order for students to get real world experience or see what they're learning in the classroom and how it applies.
Mhm.
Um, then you can go down the whole computer science hole too and talk about game development and intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. You can talk about all the psychology of game development and why so many of us love to invest thousands of hours into these games and what motivates us to keep playing. And so then there's a whole other avenue that you could take from curriculum, building them through computer science to even psychology and understanding the human mind and how it interacts with games, or why it's so motivating to play them too.
Yeah. What is the next bastion for you as far as like what does that next step look like as far as like growing the curriculum? Like is it I mean, because I'm assuming, like, especially these days, the kids are a lot more aware of what is kind of possible within, whether it be esports or just the gaming space in general. So, like, how do you take that expounded knowledge that they might already have kind of coming into the program and, like, sort of setting them on their way to figuring out whether or not they want to, do game design or, be someone who is doing broadcasts or things like that? Because there's so many things that you could do, like, and so many avenues, I guess, that you could kind of pass that you could go down. Like, how do you sort of focus them, into kind of channeling that?
Honestly, like, I think the kids are excited if you give them the opportunity. And
Mm,
so the biggest challenge that I still find that we need to do is to still educate the adult and the decision makers, either within administration or even in the community as a whole, as to why do we support this, right? Like, still one
mm,
of the number one things is like, we're trying to get kids outside and physically active. That's great. I completely agree that we still need to be physically active and go outside. However, not every kid wants to participate in a physical traditional sport, and this is their jam. Like, this is
right.
what they're good at. And so, still trying to educate some of those about the positives that offering something like this to your students and the impact that it can have is still very much a conversation that we regularly have. I can tell
Mm,
you, I've been doing this for 10 years in the state of Wisconsin, and we still are maybe at like 25 to 30% of schools have participated.
mm,
So, like, we have like, I think almost 600 public schools in the state, and we've crossed over 200 unique schools that have participated,
mm,
but we're still like, again, 30% participation. And there are still some that don't know,
yeah,
or kids are competing at home, but they don't know that our league exists or a
yeah,
league exists for them that they could participate in.
yeah,
And so then there's that whole process of like getting it started and like doing the admin side and getting a student club sponsored, or even getting this housed in your building, because now you got to talk to IT and get these games installed
yeah.
on your network. And like, then there's all those other steps essentially that need to take place to be able to make this opportunity even possible for them.
Yeah. And that's kind of interesting too, because I mean, just my little time spent in Wisconsin, I would say Wisconsin is one of the more gaming forward places, probably around the country.
Over 70 gaming studios in the state.
Yeah.
We have like Raven Software, who makes like Call of Duty. We have like the legal team for PUBG here in the state of Wisconsin. So like, we have a ton of different resources here for career exploration types of things. Again, like you said, you don't know what you don't know, and
Yeah.
people don't know that we have that much of an industry here.
You said there's still like some pushback from like parents and sort of educators and things like that. Like, what is the pushback these days? Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but I mean, at the same time, you have to see the path that this can kind of lead you down now. Like, you kind of have to see, like, okay, this can get you a real job. Like, this could, like, I get it back in the day, like when we were just kind of gaming and didn't necessarily know. It was just, okay, this is just rotting your brain and this is not really leading to anything. But even just kind of the things that I've learned, that's not necessarily true, because games bring in hand-eye coordination and these different skills that you're not necessarily thinking of at the time, but it is still working different. I mean, it takes skill to know how to work a controller or know how to work the mouse and keyboard. Like, those are skills that, like, not everybody just, I mean, everybody, it seems like they have, but not everybody has those skills.
But even just to be able to talk to the person next to you in a constructive way and to coordinate as a team, that is an extremely viable skill.
Yeah.
Being able to strategize together and collaborate and talk about how are we going to overcome this problem that we're facing. I will tell you, I guess, from kind of two facets too. Like, for my program historically, like, we would have like 4 days a week we would be in and working on just one game. And so we would set up a scrimmage against either another school or a college team, and we would play them and say, like, we want to play X, Y, and Z against X, Y, or A, B, and C to see how that works. And we want to kind of practice these situations and these calls. And we would go through and we'd have like almost a practice day, like an actual practice day against another team where we want to work on situations. Our Valorant team was spending 2 to 3 hours a night getting ready, because they're like, we want to figure out how to combo entry into this like spike site so that we can retake.
Hmm.
And so they'd be like, all right, I'm going to do A, B, and you're going to do C, D, and get in. And like, we're going to look right. And then I'm looking left. And like, they planned it, and they rolled it back, and they kept doing it, and they practiced it. And then we would do like scouting. we would look up the other team and we'd be like, all right, they play, you know, this character, this character, this character. How do we want to ban those? Do we want to let that through because we can play this, which counters it, and we can do all the strategy work that's there. And then after our match, then we can do a VOD review. So we go back and we rewatch our broadcast and we say like, okay, why did we make this decision? Was it the best decision that we could have made in the time? Like, was there another alternative? And we just talk through the process and we talk about like our decision making, our teamwork. What was the call? Who made the call? Why did we make that call? And like getting them to reflect and analyze their gameplay that way. Like that's something that outside of this program, they're not going to have some of that. And again, I'm somebody that takes this as serious as they want to. And I say, like,
Yeah.
you tell me how much you want to win. And if you really want to win, like, cool, let's put in the effort then. And we have some teams that are just casual and they just want to, you know, just have fun. And that's okay too. That's totally okay. But as far as the barrier goes, again, like some of these games, they may have characters that have guns or swords. And it's still like a PR situation in a lot of our districts to where we don't want to give a single excuse that if something were to happen and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's the video games. That Lucian has guns in League of Legends, and that's what inspired this kid in order to do a terrible decision, or that we're playing Smash Brothers and they're like, that's a violent game. And so like playing this violent game creates violent individuals. And like that's some of the mentality that we still have to try to convince people. We do have to sometimes convince parents that it isn't just brain rot. They aren't just like chugging Mountain Dew and eating Doritos in the lab playing. Like they're doing other, they're taking this seriously. Like it is something that's more focused and structured. And so like we've had some to where it's like we only allow racing games because they're not violent. But to me, if you're able to get students with the correct adult oversight in the correct setting, like you're preventing some of those other situations because of the connection, because of the rapport, and just the sense of belonging that kids have on campus. And there was just an article that came out the other day from NPR that's like 40% of kids in the last 10 years say they don't have a sense of belonging in schools. And so from our research, from our, you know, programming, like I know those kids, the data shows that they do feel like they belong to a team, they belong to a community by offering this program. You don't have to like it, but you have to admit that there are positives for those kids that participate. And honestly, we're here for the kids. Like we're here to offer something for them, and you don't have to always necessarily agree with it, but it's providing a positive experience for them.
Smash Brothers is a violent game. That's a good one right there. That's a good one right there. Smash Brothers is a violent game. Interesting. Developers and the big companies, they are, you know, obviously over the pro teams or whatnot. Do you think they have any responsibility? Because they are the ones that are building the games. Basically, all of the esports are built around a handful of companies' games. Do you feel like they should be, I guess, helping the educational route that way?
I think it's a very small percentage of the player base and population that engages with esports. So I understand from their perspective that it is a business, and you know, a majority of it is being derived from like battle passes and skins and cosmetics and stuff like that. Ultimately, as at the end of the day, they're trying to turn a profit.
Yeah.
Esports for a lot of developers is a marketing tool to just try to promote their game, and that's why they sponsor some of them. From a player like perspective, I think the path to pro to me is if you can use esports in order to further your education, and if you can reduce the expense of your education post-secondary, then do it. Because you're that good at the game and somebody is willing to provide a reduced educational experience for you in order to play that game on behalf of the university, then do it. A lot of the games, I think, like if you're the path to pro is so difficult in order to get there. And like I'm from a community too, to where like I've been in other like sports that are like up and coming that have a pro scene, but it's a very difficult pro scene. So like I grew up playing like disc golf.
Oh yeah.
And there is a pro scene, but it is a very hard pro scene to survive in. Like the prize money isn't crazy. Like you're on the road a lot. Like I'm okay living out of a tent for 2 months at a time. So like that would be okay to me. But you know, for a lot of people, it's not like a lavish pro experience. And even some of the bigger pros for games like a Smash Bros. Like, is it their full source of income? Like, are they truly a full-time professional player? And for a lot of them, no. Like, they're
Mhm.
streaming, they're doing all these other like side things, side gigs and stuff that in order to sustain their continued success playing the game. So I don't think the developers have a responsibility, but I understand why they've stepped in, because before it was kind of like the wild wild west, to where
Yeah.
anybody could create a league, anybody could use the game, and you didn't have to like have permission, you didn't have to fill out community license requests, and because it grew so fast in popularity, that a lot of them like quickly strapped down who could use their game, what you could do with their game, like how you could promote it, what you can like sponsor and revenue. And like there's all these restrictions now because there are so many bad actors in the space, that honestly, I think that was their responsibility,
Hmm.
is to limit a little bit of what the industry could do,
Mhm.
because we had a lot of crypto bros coming in, and like,
Yeah.
a Nintendo event being sponsored by like some online betting platform or some, alcohol, or,
Yeah.
depending on what state that you're in, some sort of like THC based product. And like Nintendo's like, no, 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 no. Hey, we're family friendly. Like, we don't want that associated with our stuff. And that's their right with their intellectual property. So
Yeah.
I think they've done a better job coming in and almost restricting a little bit in order to make it more legitimate, in my opinion.
Yeah, very interesting. Where would you like to see it, and what does the next step look like for you as far as, like, taking either what you're doing to the next step or just in the gaming space in general? What's sort of next for you?
And I'll speak for Wisconsin, but like we are pushing a lot more as far as like going from high school or middle school and trying to work more with our colleges. I'm a real big fan of trying to create that real world connection and do like career and technical education type competitions, being like, use esports as your way to develop your broadcasting personality, to build out your graphic design portfolio, learn different software because you're creating these things, or you're using software to become a statistician for your team or something like that, and building out more of those opportunities. I think Wisconsin's great in the fact that we have a collegiate league here in our state that we work closely with. We're creating regional opportunities with our colleges too. So schools that maybe don't get to qualify for state have an opportunity to go to a LAN experience. We have things like the Midwest Gaming Classic that's here. We have game developer conferences here. And so just like trying to promote what we already have, honestly, because we have so much, just there's no awareness of it, or people just getting that message in front of them, or getting those events in front of them and saying like, look at what you have.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, "Oh, Wisconsin, there's nothing cool tech-wise going on there." But it's like, actually, there's a lot happening here. You just didn't get the message because we didn't get the ad or the sponsored post
Mhm.
directly in front of your face on your screen, and you just
Yeah.
didn't know. So
Yeah.
I think we're continuing to push the needle. Progress isn't always overnight. It's not always fast, but as long as we just keep trying to keep pushing this to the next level, it'll keep growing and keep succeeding.
You don't necessarily think of Wisconsin as a tech hub or, uh, I mean, because I drove there and you see nothing but farms and cornfields and stuff. So you definitely don't think of it as a tech hub, and then you get there and you see all this gaming stuff.
It's -9 wind chill outside right
Yeah,
now,
see
so
that?
you're stuck
Yeah.
inside with your games, man.
Talk a little bit about like the different organizations and things like that, because it is a hub, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are trying to make a lot of things happen, but it's still probably growing as forever it is. And so what sort of boards are you on, and what sort of conversations are you having with different people as far as implementing different things or how the growth is sort of turning out?
So we have like the Interstate Scholastic Esports Alliance as well, which is I believe 27 states right now that have like
Okay.
a K-12 education league. And so we're all in an association together. So we are working, putting together resources and trying to more like formalize a lot of what's happening, formalizing like what are like recruitment standards, what are common rule sets for all of the games. So if there's a new state that wants to get onboarded, then it's like, well, here's what our recommendations are. We're trying to be, or are, like the governing body.
Mhm.
And to say like from a Scholastic Esports Association lens, this is what we recommend. We're working with developers. So we work with Nintendo. We've had some that are on like the Riot Scholastic board as well. We've had some seats at the table with like Blizzard when discussing some of those community guidelines that they're implementing as well. So just constantly serving in different roles and trying to push some of these standards forward, as far as that's kind of been my role in some of those, helping like, I don't want to say found, but like just be an early member of just
Hmm.
bringing on other states together and be like, hey, what are you doing in Georgia? What are you doing
Yeah.
in Florida? I think I'm meeting with, she either is or was running like the Tennessee League.
Huh.
She's coming up to Wisconsin for a conference this week, and I'm going to go meet up with her and her team. But like, so like just saying like, well, how does this work in your state? What are you doing differently? How is this successful? What successes are you finding? Or like, I've run into this barrier. How is anybody else overcoming it? And just being able to like have those types of resources that are there too have been very, very beneficial, I think, to bring up this whole ecosystem together.
Yeah.
I know I gave all of our nonprofit documentation when other states were looking to incorporate. And it was like, yep, here's our bylaws. Here's our like articles of incorporation. Here's why we did this. Here's my recommendation because we struggled with this. And like, then all of a sudden we went from like 3 or 4 states being like incorporated to 7 or 8 states very easily, because it was like,
Yeah.
here's all of our resources, do whatever you need to with these, and good luck. Let me know if you have
Yeah.
questions. So
Yeah.
that's been very beneficial, I think, for the whole scholastic ecosystem. And then I know I've helped with like the National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors, which is like a professional development type organization now too, to where there's an annual conference. There's some regionals too, but to where we can just get together and talk about best practices. Here's what, our successes are. And it's more of again, there's like a K-12 pathway, there's a collegiate pathway. And so bringing in like professional coaches to talk about, hey, I don't know how to coach this game. Here's the X's and Y's that we do as a professional team. And so
Gotcha.
that's been very beneficial as well.